Thank you. I feel like I cannot say anything else after. I should just go, thank you very much. I'll be here all week. That is pretty funny. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Borders. This is they really have been very supportive. I'm actually doing 22 cities on this tour, which is quite a lot. This is city number 8 or number 9, and every Borders store that I've been they've been fantastic. They do a wonderful job with the setup. So I just really like to say thank you to you for that. So Lisa was right. And it's funny that that my editor got so excited about this book. Book Expo is this giant booksellers convention. Every author goes there. Every bookseller, every publisher, every agent. It's huge. They hold it in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. And it's interesting that the place where I was sort of brave enough to tell my editor about this book idea was also the place where I had the initial sort of inspiration. And it was the day before my book Stop Getting Dumped was coming out. And I'm at this big convention. My book is coming out the next day. I have my new agent that I've had for like 3 weeks, and I'm so excited, and I'm feeling like my whole life is going to change. It's going to be this big thing. As of tomorrow, I'm going to be a big famous author. And I'm walking down this massive hallway, and you see all, and there, Jodi Picoult is there, and John Grisham is there, and all these amazing authors that I'd admired. And I'm walking down just in awe with my agent, and she spots another agent, sort of waves to her. Ah. The woman comes over, and she says, well, how's it been going? And it turns out that this woman is the agent for a very prominent dating expert, and she had just gone through a very horrible and very public breakup. And the woman says, oh, my gosh, it has been horrible since the divorce. And I just remember standing there with a smile plastered on my face, thinking, I have just put my entire personal life out for the media and for everyone to sort of comment on. And when I write, I'm really thinking about, I'm just writing to you, or I'm just writing to you, and we're having a conversation. And it's okay for me to tell you things that are really personal and what I really think about things, because it's just you and me. And you don't, and it's really, for a writer, you can't be honest if you think that this thing that I'm expressing to you is going to go out for 8 billion people to read about or to hear about. And so you sort of expose yourself a little bit when you write a book, or you do if you write one that people are really going to relate to. And I just remember thinking, oh no. I had only been married for 3 years. I had a young child at home. And I thought, I have just exposed myself in this really big way that I had not planned on. And once I, took a few deep cleansing breaths, I realized that my husband's not going to leave me. I'm not going to have to face Oprah and say why I trotted him out on stage, a few weeks ago and told everyone how to, collar him up to the garage, and then now he's leaving. So I thought, it's going to be fine. It's okay. But I also thought, gosh, what a thing to put your whole life out for someone to judge in that way, and how difficult it would be, especially as women, if our careers and our relationships are so closely tied together, and if somebody pulls the string, that your entire life could unravel. And I thought about that. I really molded. I mean, once I got over the initial panic, okay, my husband is a nice guy. It's all going to be fine. We're not going to go through this terrible thing in public. I was really intrigued by that idea of what happens when your whole life is sort of wrapped up in one thing and that falls apart. How do you recover from that? So I had this idea for this novel, and my dating advice book had done really well, and so my editor really wanted me to write another dating advice book, and my agent really wanted me to write another dating advice book, and I kept making notes on this novel. And so one day I just sort of cranked out a page and sent it to Lisa, and she was the only person that I sent it to. I hadn't sent it to my mother. I didn't show it to my husband. It was just one of those things where I typed it and hit send and was brave. And she emailed me back right away and said, you have to write this. But I was still sort of, and I'm not a shy person. I'm a person that jumps right in. If there's an opportunity, I'm always the one to take it. I am no retiring little flower. But there was something about this that felt really risky to me, because I already have this great career over here as a dating expert. And I think, do I really, being a novelist, that's a lot harder. There's more rejection, and it's more difficult, and I don't know how to do that. And so I met with my editor, and the whole plan was to talk about this new dating book that I was going to do. And we had a lovely lunch, and we talked about the new dating book. She said, oh, that sounds great. When can you get it to me? And then right at the end of the lunch, right as the coffee was coming, she says, it's so funny. I got this novel proposal the other day, and it was really terrible, and I'm not going to buy it. But for whatever reason, I just thought about you. And I did not think, bad novel, me. That was not the connection I made. And I just had this moment where I just thought, it is now or never, and I just blurted it out to her. I've had this idea for a novel, and I wanted to write it. And it's one of these great moments where you're both leaning over the table, talking a million miles a minute, like the great first date when you just hit it off right away. And we're talking and talking and talking, and she said, forget the dating book. You have to write this novel. And so I did. And I always do better under a deadline. So I set a date for a conference call. I had one page written, the one page I had sent to Lisa, and sort of an idea of how it would go in my head. And so I set a date about 3 months away. I bought a non-refundable plane ticket, and I told her I would be there on Thursday, the 3rd of September, and I would have a proposal, and how much of the book did she need to buy it? And she said about half. Well, I locked myself in a hotel room, and I had 9 chapters and a good proposal, and she bought it on that. And a year later, 15 Minutes of Shame was born. So I'm going to read a little chapter, and we can talk about different things if you'd like. And so this is how it all sort of starts. I'm utterly humiliated. I hiss this to my best friend Jules as I squat behind the smelly dumpster of a gas and go, trying to sneak a glimpse of my husband without getting caught. Damn. He glances in the general direction of the dumpster, and I panic. I nearly fall over backward and accidentally drop my cell phone into a murky puddle. It hasn't rained in weeks, and I fear toxic waste or worse, old convenience store hot dog water as I fish my phone out and wipe it on my sweatpants. It leaves a sort of greenish smear, and I don't even want to imagine what it could be. Last week, I was on national television wearing a cute little non-mommy outfit and my favorite pair of Christian Louboutins, talking about how every woman deserves a fabulous life and how they, too, can snag the man of their dreams. This week, I'm crouching in filth, looking a lot like a homeless person because I forgot it was my turn to drive carpool this morning, and I rushed out of the house wearing dirty sweatpants, a Who's Your Daddy t-shirt, and a pair of sparkly pink flip-flops. I can't remember brushing my hair or my teeth. Are you there? I whispered to Jules. Sorry, I dropped the phone. What on earth are you doing? She asked in that honey-drip drawl all men melt for. Jules is a flesh and blood, 8th generation Southern belle. She hasn't left the house without earrings since puberty. Any 2-hour car ride with her includes a picnic basket fully stocked with ham biscuits. She's always polite. She's always enviable. Jules would never be caught squatting behind a dumpster spying on her husband. The truth is, I have no idea what I'm doing. He's supposed to be in Atlanta. I can feel myself rambling. I packed his suitcase. Are you sure it's him? Jules asked gently. Maybe it's just someone who looks like him. You mean like an evil twin? No, I saw him straight on. It's Will. Something is definitely up. Will exits the store carrying a small paper bag. He looks both ways before stepping off the curb and then opens the door of his silver SUV and slides into the driver's seat. What's in the bag, I wonder? Condoms? A microwave burrito? Maybe he's taking a later flight, Jules offers. Maybe. I don't think so. We live in Sarasota, a small city with a small airport. Usually the first flight is the last flight. Plus, Will does this Atlanta trip at least once a week for a liquor client based in Georgia. His flight leaves at 8:37 in the morning, and he usually makes it home the next morning around the same time. Damn, I can't decide if I should hop back in my car and follow him to see where he's going, or throw myself in front of his car so we know he's been busted. I panic, and the moment passes. He drives off, and I stand frozen in my puddle of muck until his car passes the intersection. My big opportunity to catch him in the act that whatever's been keeping him from Atlanta has vanished, and I feel like a jerk, but I don't know if I could stomach what I might learn. Normally, Will is not the kind of husband you worry about. He's a blue suit wearing, sex on Friday, baseball on Saturday kind of guy. But my imagination starts churning, and I envision all sorts of sinister possibilities. He's having an affair. He's an undercover agent for the CIA. He's lost his biggest client, and he's too chicken to tell me. I feel the early tinklings of panic. Or, says Jules, maybe his trip just got canceled. Leave it to Jules to be rational. Why don't you call him, she says. Call him. Why didn't I call him? Genius. Jules is a genius. I'll just call him. He'll explain everything. We'll laugh about the whole thing. I hang up with Jules and speed dial Will. No answer. His phone clicks over to voicemail immediately, which means the damn thing isn't even turned on. I get back into my car, which is parked high-speed chase style behind the dumpster. And okay, fine, I wasn't exactly focused on my parallel parking skills this morning when I swerved into the gas and go. I was driving home after dropping off our carpool kids at school and almost drove over the median when I saw Will's car pull into the parking lot. As I head home, I try to clear my mind and think rationally. I take a deep breath and try to figure out how I've gone from happily ever after to panicking that my husband is an international terrorist / philanderer / pathological liar within the space of a few minutes. It's probably nothing. Crap, it's definitely something. I pull into our gated community, slowing down so that the scanner can read the sticker on the side of my gas-guzzling mommy-mobile. I inch forward until the nose of my car is just inches from the flimsy stick, otherwise known as the gate, designed to keep all manner of undesirables out of my neighborhood. What's funny is that where I live in Florida, nearly all of the communities are gated communities. I'm not sure that we even have undesirables. If we do, knowing my neighbors, they're probably special ordered from Barney's. If you travel down any semi-main road here, you'll see guard shacks and electric gates every few miles. And the parking lots at Whole Foods, Nuovo, and Siesta Beach are all populated with cars bearing the telltale barcode sticker on the rear passenger window. Sometimes I can hardly believe I live here. Overnight, I went from a single girl shoebox of an apartment, apropos, I think, since my prized possessions were primarily shoes, where I felt like I'd hit the jackpot if I was lucky enough to get an up-close parking space or an open lounge at the pool. Straight to suburbia, do not pass go, where my wedding ring and barcode sticker grant me an all-access pass to the gated kingdom of Botox moms. And although I never really had trouble fitting in, even after 3 years, I still feel like I don't really belong here. I hit redial on my phone. Will's voicemail clicks on again. The gate is stuck again. The guard is busy with the line of cars in the visitor's lane and doesn't look up from his clipboard. He waves 3 cars through, barely glancing up. Apparently, all you need is a pizza or a lawnmower to gain entrance to this gated haven in suburbia. The front of my car is now touching the front of the gate. It's not moving. I roll down my window and wait patiently because I don't want to be one of those women who wave their manicured nails out the window with a backhanded salute while they lean on the horn with their elbows, demanding priority service. I try to catch the guard's eye, hoping a little smile and a wave will do the trick. "That lane is for residents only," he shouts to me over the shout of a muffler-deficient station wagon filled with mops and Brazilian housekeepers. "I am a resident," I shout back, smiling purposefully. "The gate is not working." He rolls his eyes at me. Will and I have been living here the entire 3 years we've been married. I go through this gate 6 times a day. I call the guard check twice a day to add friends, the bug man, the pool guy to the list. The man with the clipboard is Frank. He has 2 kids. He works the day shift at the North Gate. He looks at me as though he has never seen me before. "You need a sticker," he says authoritatively. "I have a sticker. Could you please just raise the gate? I'm really in a hurry," I plead. All of a sudden, I'm flashing back to the scene from that old movie, Trading Places, where Dan Aykroyd has just gotten out of jail. And when he gets to his house, not only will his key not work in the lock, but the butler pretends he's never seen him before. "Oh, my God, I'm going to have to move in with a hooker." "You need a sticker," he says again, pressing the magic button inside the guard shack. Access at last. I peel through the gate, squealing the tires as I turn onto my street, popping the car into the garage like a pinball going down the chute for the last time. A wave of dread and denial washes over me like sewage. Crap, crap, crap. Get it together, get it together, get it together. Let's review, okay? What did I really see? Generally, I try not to be the overreacting type. I am, in fact, a quite rational 31-year-old author and stepmother, try 40, stepmother of 2 kids, Lily and Aiden. Obviously, the Prince Charming I'd envisioned from the time I was 8 years old was not exactly a divorced guy with 2 kids. But the kids I once thought would be a burden have turned out to be the center of my life. Will is 36, was formerly married to a formerly sane beauty queen, Miss Arkansas, if you must know. And we, the 2 of us, have custody of his kids, children I consider to be the most amazing 6- and 8-year-old on the planet. Of course, I'm crazy about them, so I might be a little biased. Will and I have been married 3 years. We met when I was on tour for my first book, Secrets to Make the Guys Go Gaga, and he was the PR guy who landed me a spot on Soap Talk. Don't laugh, it's a real show. After years of writing toothpaste jingles and doling out dating advice to my girlfriends over margaritas, I figured that a dating book was a good place to start the dream I'd always had about becoming a real writer, not just someone who made a living spinning canned meat and golf spikes to the American public. So by sole virtue of my ability to turn a phrase and peg a loser at 500 feet, I've now become a dating guru. To be honest, I spent my whole life trying to make sense of men. Both my parents died in a car accident when I was just a baby, and I was raised by my grandma Vernie and her 4 sisters in an estrogen bubble. They were a wild, strong, loving, tight knot of Southern women. All of them had been married at one time to men that they adored. Unfortunately, they were all widowed long before I hit kindergarten. Husbands had a habit of croaking at very early ages in our family. Great Uncle Joe was a legend. He lived to the ripe old age of 43. Until junior high, my only personal experience with how the male sex was supposed to operate came from secondhand stories the aunties told me under the influence of bundt cake and our 7-hour Yahtzee marathons, late-night reruns of Gene Kelly movies, and old clippings they've saved from 1950s issues of Good Housekeeping on how to keep your husband happy. The first of my beloved aunts passed away when I entered high school. My grandmother died the next year. By the time I was 19, they were all gone, and I found myself orphaned for the second time. I thought that once I wrote the book, Oprah would call, and I'd be instantly catapulted to fame and riches, which I've since learned is a common fantasy among clueless first-time authors. Instead, it brought me to Will, who told me, unless you're a celebrity or a celebrity's personal trainer or the guy who does makeovers on TV, nobody cares whether you wrote a book or not. When he booked me on Soap Doc, he told me I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get you this one. I was grateful and horribly disappointed at the same time, like finding out you've won a $5.7 million lottery and then learning you're only going to be getting a nickel a week for the next 324 years. Eventually, after a few years of dismal sales, the book took off and became a bestseller, surprising everyone, including me. Producers and agents started calling, and suddenly I had a weekly guest spot on a big national TV show, my own radio call-in program, and even my own perfume. 2 years after my book hit the shelves, I was recognizable to every woman in America under the age of 60. Darby Vaughn, the Dr. Phil of dating. I dial Will's phone again, and this time he picks up on the first ring. Hey, I say, quickly, trying to sound like my perky usual self rather than a dumpster diving maniac. Hi, he answers. I can only talk for a second. My flight was delayed. I'm already late for the meeting. What do you mean? You're still here? I ask him. God, I'm an idiot. Talk about freaking out over nothing. A sensation of reprieve rushes over me, and I feel the sickly sweet relief of someone who's just stepped off the human centrifuge ride at the carnival. Did you miss your Starbucks or something this morning? I'm in Atlanta. My heart drops. You mean right now? Jesus, Darby, he says. I've only been making this exact same trip for 2 years. What's up with you today? Nothing, I choke out. My brain starts spinning again, and my mind goes from 0 to divorce court in 3.6 seconds. When will you be back in town? I ask, cautiously. Tomorrow morning, he says, same as always, and then softens. I'm sorry, Darby, I don't mean to be so cranky. I had a bad flight, and it's just sort of put a damper on my morning. It's okay, I say, numbly, unable to think of anything else at the moment. Hey, gotta run, love you, love the kids. His phone snaps off before I have a chance to respond. Instead, I throw up. I scramble to aim for my open car window, but bad aim or bad luck, I miss the mark, and vomit oozes down the side of the door and into the window crack. I am not going to have a breakdown in my 3-car garage. I'm not an actress. I apologize. I need to go back to drama school. So I'm sure many of you are wondering if this is me. And it's not. Parts of it are me. Certainly the dating experience, some of the bizarre stuff that happens on television, a lot of that has come from my experience. One thing that I've realized, having worked in television now for the last 2 years and having done countless interviews, is that things look a lot different on television than they do in real life. And bizarre things happen, and it's sort of this whole fake world. And it's sort of distressing to see young women get really wrapped up in how, they sort of want to mold their lives to things that they see on TV. Because having been on TV, I can tell you that it is not real. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. We have a TV camera here today, so I am wearing far more makeup than a normal person would wear in real life. I also have, see this little darker thing? That's because I actually have double chins in real life, but not on camera today. I'm going to look great. So there's something kind of interesting about that disparity between what things look like and what they really are. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thanks. Yes. Thank you.
You know, I like to follow authors. That's why I'm here. And I would like to know what has been like your best book signing experience.
Well, this one, of course. It's funny. I've had a number of really wonderful book signing experiences. The first signing that I did on this tour was at an independent bookstore in Denver called the Tattered Cover, which is the store where I really fell in love with books. I went there as a kid, growing up, and it's this wonderful old independent with the big chairs, and it's just a wonderful place. And I had a lot of friends and family and people who loved me there, and so I started my tour there. And it was a great experience because I felt like I was related to everyone in the room, or I knew them, or they'd come to see me because they hadn't seen me since college, and it was a really wonderful experience. I had another book signing where only 2 people showed up, which is sometimes it's 150 people, and sometimes it's 1, and sometimes it's you and the bookstore manager chatting. And thank you for being here. And then, so I had this other book signing where 2 people showed up, and one of them and she came to see me for 15 Minutes of Shame. But she came because she had read Stop Getting Dumped 5 years ago, and it got her through a really difficult time in her life. And I spent the entire 45. I didn't really do a formal reading. We just talked. She had already bought the book, and we just spent the whole time talking about how she wanted to tell me how my first book had really impacted her life. And that was hugely meaningful to me. I mean, that was the whole reason that I wrote the book in the first place, is that I wanted to help other women. And so that was, I would say, one of the top 5 for sure. It was a really meaningful experience to me. I haven't had any bad, knock on wood, haven't had any bad signings on this tour. The worst one, I think, was when I was touring for Stop Getting Dumped, and I was doing an event in a smaller mall store, and the mall was like slated for demolition, and there was like the anchor stores had already closed up shop, and they were like at the very end. So it's like, there are like 3 people in the whole mall, and it was really early on in my career, and it was at the time when I felt really responsible for, if I don't get 50 people to the event, I failed. It's my fault, and I failed. And the fact is, people wouldn't go in that mall after dark. And I felt really, really terrible. I ended up selling 17 books, which actually is not a bad signing at all. And they pushed me as far out into the mall as they could, and I was literally flagging down people, and they would say, like, "Gosh, really? They brought you here?" And it ended up not being that here. But I always have to say that was my worst signing, and even that one wasn't that bad. I mean, really, one person comes out to see you because they're interested in your book. That's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. Yes?
Can you tell a little bit more? I've read. Take it a little bit more about what happens to the story to the Today Show.
Okay.
You have to read it.
Okay. I'll describe. Yeah, I won't read it again. I know that's the other thing. In nonfiction, you just talk at readings. You don't actually read. And in fiction, you're supposed to read. So I apologize if I'm a little rough, because it's new to me. So, okay, so this is what happens. She goes home. Her husband is pretending to be out of town, and so she does what any rational, charming woman would do. She rifles through his desk as soon as she gets home, looking for evidence about where he has been when he says he's in Atlanta and he's really not. So she finds out by looking at his frequent flyer miles that he has, in fact, not been in Atlanta when he's supposed to be. And so she goes down to his office to rifle through his desk at work. And of course, this is a woman who's supposed to have it all together, and she's got this very polished persona, and she's totally freaking out on the inside. And her car smells like vomit because she's, you know. So she goes down, and she finds less evidence to indicate that he was, in fact, cheating. And she actually finds some evidence maybe he's not cheating. And so she thinks, I'm overreacting. I'm under stress. I'm about to go on this tour. And so he comes back the next day, and she thinks he's going to, she confronts him about it. And he has basically an answer for everything. He got there late. He's hired the biggest divorce attorney in town. He's not hired the biggest divorce attorney in town, but he's a client. And so it's all been a big misunderstanding. And she really wants to believe him. I mean, she's come from a situation where she's not had a family for her whole life, and then she just slips right into this Pottery Barn catalog and really wants that existence. So she says, you know what? He's a great husband. He's a great guy. I don't know why I'm overreacting. She goes on her tour, and she's like, everything's fine. I'm just making a big deal about this. So she's on this big, exciting tour. She's so excited. Her big dream is coming true. She's going to go on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. And he informs her live on national television that her husband is, in fact, leaving her, and he is reconciled with her ex-wife. And she throws up and then passes out on national television. And then it's run over and over and over again on, the late night shows. And it's funny, I just did a show in Philadelphia earlier in the week, and they said, oh, we would totally run that over and over again. And so that's what happens to her. And she has to sort of, it's like not only the worst moment of your life, but literally the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to you on camera, running and running and running on the Conan O'Brien show. And how do you come back from that? So that is what it's about.
So the rest of the story is about that.
Yeah, and about recovering.
Whoever got dumped in high school.
This is the book. That's right. And we're empowered, and we can do it. So it is. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I'm fascinated that whole idea of the public persona and the private persona, and you've got your nonfiction work that is very much open and then this,
right,
which also has a personal angle to it. And has there ever been a point where you felt, well, maybe I revealed too much? In this notion of wanting to be public but not wanting to be humiliated.
Right. Well, what's really interesting? I felt like I, in order to be really true to the story, I felt like I had to reveal a lot more of myself, of my emotion, in 15 Minutes of Shame. The first book, I'm the expert. I'm sort of giving you some good strategy on how to be more effective with your dating, and don't sleep with a guy on the first night. And in this book, she's having all these real emotions, and I think we've all gone through horrible breakups, and we've all felt like your whole world is just crashing in. And I think most people have just experienced some sort of setback in their jobs where they think, I am never going to live this down. And so I think there's probably more of my heart, more of my emotion in the novel, which is interesting, than in the other book. So thank you. That's a good question.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your writing process?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. I am really lucky because I live 8 minutes away from the beach. So on the days that I can do this, I will take my laptop down. I live right near Siesta Beach, and they have a lovely pavilion, and it's like trapped in 1961. They have like the steel drum music. They have like the guy selling the hot dogs. It's great. And so I'll go down there a lot of times and just sort of people watch and make notes. Generally speaking, with both the fiction and nonfiction, I outline first, and then I need to sort of know where the story or the book is going, and then I really fill in from there. So I know what's going to happen in the chapter. I know that she's going to find out on national TV that her husband is dumping her. What I didn't know before I started writing it was that she was going to throw up into the chrysanthemums and then pass out and have, Al and Matt outside, doing the weather when she comes to. So that kind of thing comes really organically as I'm writing, but I do plot out the story, and I use a whiteboard in my office, which has been really helpful to sort of storyboard the process out. Now, Lisa, on the other hand, cannot. She's also a writer, author of a fabulous book called Finding Grace When You Can't Find Clean Underwear, and another book called Forget Perfect. She also fabulous, sorry, and she, yes, it is, and she has a process that's completely opposite of mine. She needs to. I need to think things through first, and then write everything. She thinks by writing, so she just pounds out a big pile of words, and then boils it down to get the key essence and sort of the big facts. And most writers I know either they work one way, cannot imagine working the other. Lisa and I talked about writing outlines. She can't even imagine such a thing. Whereas I can't imagine doing it the way that she does it, but writers are successful doing it both ways. So, anyways, yeah.
What about that idea of having the book turned into a movie? I mean, is that something that an author always aspires to have?
Absolutely.
Double-edged product,
Well,
alcoholic.
okay, we have sold movie rights to 15 Minutes of Shame. Yay! And it's one of those things as you're writing, especially if you're like, ooh, that was good, and you're just thinking, yeah, I mean, that's most times it's sort of your wildest dream to think that this book could be made into a movie. And what's really interesting about the process when my film agent was sending it around, he had originally intended to send it to a lot of studios, but one thing that they do is they'll sort of send it to a few key people to kind of get a buzz going about it. And one of those key people wanted to buy the book. Wanted to buy the movie rights to the book and write the screenplay himself. And this is a guy who gets $1.5 million a screenplay, and he's huge. And I can't say his name because I'd love to. And he loved it. And so he bought the rights, and he's working on it right now. And they're approaching actresses. So it's funny when I get asked that question a lot, and everyone who reads it, they always have an opinion. And in fact, a friend of mine in Philadelphia she just finished the book, and she emailed me a list of who she thought should be in all the parts. When I first imagined the book, I started with kind of a Reese Witherspoon kind of a person in my head. But about a quarter of the way through, it was Drew Barrymore, and I could not get her out. Kristen, my friend, is back here squinting. She's like, no. Drew Barrymore is the person that I had in my head through the entire book, and I think she would be lovely. Holt, the hottie divorce attorney, this is the thing. I wrote this dating book to teach you how to meet a really nice guy, but I was able to create one from scratch in the book, which was lovely. And I can't think of an actor who I would really love to play him, except I sort of like James Marsden a little bit. I think he would be good. And do we all know who Judy Greer is? She was in 27 Dresses. She's sort of this wisecracking best friend. And she was in The Wedding Planner, sort of the same role. She kind of always plays the wisecracking best friend. And she's quite funny. And I thought that she would make an excellent Tia in the book, who's sort of the wisecracking best friend.
Do you get influence over roles or anything like that? Or what are the parameters that you have as being author? Do you get to review the screenplay?
You get nothing. It's like handing your baby over to a stranger. The one thing that I was really nervous about the idea of a man writing the screenplay before I spoke with him, and I thought, I don't know if he's going to get all the girlfriend stuff. I don't know that he's going to really understand the relationship that this woman has with her stepchildren. And I just wasn't sure. I sort of really went into it. The part of you was like, someone wants to buy the book, and then the other part of you was like, I don't want it to turn into some, bus full of nuns on spring break. And so we had this 2-hour conference call, and I got off the phone thinking, this is the only person who can write the screenplay for this. And he loved all the parts that I loved, and he loved the characters the way that I loved them. So I trust him as the person that's going to be the best person to sort of bring this to film, and that's really all you can do, because you don't have. They could title it different. They could add 7 characters. They can cut people off. They can kill somebody off. They can do whatever they want. So, but you just have to trust the process and know it's going to work out well. I sure hope so. I know. Oh, I started like picking out shoes like the day we found out we were getting the offer. I was like, okay. Yeah, gosh. I don't, it's not like it's something that's written into the contract, but the screenwriter is so nice. He's really a very collaborative person, and I feel like he would want me there. I mean, he's already bought the rights now. He doesn't have any reason to talk to me, and yet he's been emailing, and so I feel like I probably will.
And of course, since she has 2 small children, we'll have to stay home with a husband.
Yes, I'll be taking applications for my date. Oh gosh, I love so many. Well, I always have to say Lisa or McLeod. I love Jennifer Weiner. I love Sophie Kinsella. I think they do some really smart, funny women's fiction. One of my favorite writers is Lenore Skenazy. I'm not sure she writes for the New York Sun, and she's a wonderful columnist. And she's done books, but it's like like How to Take Your Kids Around Colorado. She's not written any novels, but she's a funny, wonderful writer. And I love Jane Austen, and I love Oscar Wilde, and I love Dave Barry and Shakespeare. And actually, I have a funny story about that. Lisa and I were at this event, Book Expo again, where everything happens to me in my life. And Dave Barry was there, and I told him this story about how when I was in junior high school, I was in this English class, this AP English class, with this horrible, horrible teacher. And she was, we were reading Romeo and Juliet, and I remember what a strict grammarian she was, and she would always talk about how Shakespeare was this wonderful writer, but then if you ever veered in your own work sort of off the path, she would be the first one to crack the whip and get you right back on the program. And I remember reading Shakespeare during the day, and then I went home that night and read a Dave Barry column. And it hit me that what the two of them had in common was that they broke all of these rules. And they did it in a way that was so wonderful and so them and so unique to their voices. And I thought, these are two really great writers. And I realized I could write, that this teacher wasn't really going to get me in that way and that I was going to have to follow her rules. But I also got that I could write the way that I thought in my heart, in my brain, and that it would be okay. And sure enough, it is. So know that. So you have to listen to your own voice. So that's good. Yes?
I have a question about your writing process.
Sure.
So you kind of outlined where your plot's going to go. Do you end up writing any extra scenes that you're the cutting during the editing process?
Yeah, I got rid of I didn't really get rid of a lot of scenes, but I had to go through and make some significant changes because Kristen read the book, right? And Lisa read the book. And originally, Holt had an incurable disease, and he was going to die. And that was sort of the reason that Darby was not particularly interested in getting involved with him in any way, shape, or form. And my editor said, this is just a teensy bit melodramatic. And she was right, and I realized she was right. And then the one thing that my assistant at the time and my editor said is, this Holt guy is great. We need more character. We need more scenes with Holt in them. So I wrote some more scenes, and Holt lives. So he's healthy. He has no diseases. He's got his heart's working. So that was a big change. In editing, I didn't have a lot. That was really the main thing that changed. The other thing that changed was that my editor insisted that Darby's friends would all live right in her same town if they had gone to college together, and that they would all live in the same place. And I said, that is just not realistic. I have my girlfriend from college right here, and we don't live anywhere. I don't know any women who have all their girlfriends from college that live right by them. You get married, you start your career, or one or the other, or both, and then everybody spreads out, and you go different places, and then you see each other every 5 years. Sorry about that. So, does that explain it? Yeah, good. Anybody else? Yes. I love you. Please come to all my book signings. I know, you're great.
What's your best advice for writers?
My best advice for writers is to either work in a bookstore and be around books all the time, where you can read everything, so really learn. And then and I think the number one thing that you can do is get a job writing, where you work with the people who are a lot better than you are. Because when you're in school, if you're a good writer, a lot of times when you're in school, you're already sort of the best writer in your class. And you're not going to learn anything if you go somewhere where you're the best writer. You're going to learn something if you go where you're the crappiest writer. Because you're going to work so hard to get your work to the level of these other people. And I have to say, my first job in advertising as a copywriter, I worked for a guy named Tommy Thompson, and I learned more in the year that I worked for him than I have ever learned in college, in any job since. And I mean, I learned so much that year, and he's an excellent writer. But I also went home crying, you know, my car, you know, I'd come in the morning, ready to go, but, you know, at night I would just bawl my eyes out because he was so hard on me. And I'm thankful now because he made me a much better writer. A much better writer. And I think that's the thing that you need to do, work with other people, hopefully no one that makes you cry, but someone who will tell you the truth, who says, you know what, this is, you know, not so good, or this is, you know, or you need to work on this, or tighten this up, or I really didn't believe this. Lisa actually was a good soundboard, because she's really good with sort of emotional stuff, where I would write something and she'd be like, I so didn't believe that. And I'd change it, and then she'd read it again. She'd be like, I cried. And it's just one of those things where you have to have somebody that you can really trust who's a better writer than you are. And you have to continually search for better and better writers. Yes?
So I'm curious, how did you go from copywriting to dating expert?
Well, I was, okay, Kristen, I was always a dating expert. I was just masking as a copywriter. I was always the one giving dating advice to all of my girlfriends, and I actually had, my girlfriends were all pretty good daters. And we were talking about this this morning. Kristen and I were talking about, there were 7 of us that got married, 7 out of 8 of us that got married in a 1-year time frame. And that's been 10 years ago, and everybody, all 9, still, or 7, sorry, I can't add, all 7 of us are still happily married. We all picked great guys. And, my mom is a really practical person. I got my Aunt Ann was married for 50 years before my Uncle Jack died. So I have a lot, and the thing I said about in the book, Darby's, the men in Darby's life all sort of die off early. That actually happens in my life as well, so hopefully my husband eats his veggies. But it's one of those things where it was always something that was really fascinating to me, how relationships work. And I made a study of it. And then, now it's been 6 years. I've written on every dating and relationships topic. I've been on television for 2 years, 2.5 years, talking about dating and relationships. So I started off with Stop Getting Dumped, sort of using advice that I had used when I was younger, and my experiences, the experiences of my friends, my girlfriends, and certainly all of us have had bad dating experiences. You'd be lying if you didn't. I myself had a horrible boyfriend. But for the most part, I dated really nice guys, and I married a really nice guy. And my friends, for the most part, dated really nice guys and married nice guys. So it was something that was interesting to me, and it still fascinates me, the whole idea. Yes.
So did your dating advice change once the online dating became so popular?
Well, it's really funny. It didn't, actually. It's funny because the Stop Getting Dumped really doesn't talk at all about online dating, and it's huge. The thing about online dating that's so difficult is that lying is rampant in online dating. It's just very difficult to spot someone who's not being honest until you get there, and he's 4 feet shorter, and he's not really the owner of the bookstore. He's a car wash guy. I just forgot the question. Just totally went out of my head. Online dating. So it is more of a challenge. I think the other thing is that women are sort of, you sort of almost have to take a less kind of traditional role. You have men who are approached a lot more, and they sort of get a little arrogant about that, and it doesn't work as well as that sort of face-to-face. If you think 80 or 90% of communication is nonverbal, and you're only getting 10%, which may or may not be true on online dating, it's very difficult. What I do really like, as far as modern dating methods, is speed dating, where you can meet 40 people in one night. Most people make an average of 6 matches. And if the guy's putting you to sleep, you only have to spend 3 minutes with them before the little bell rings, and you go to the next one. So, anybody else? No? Okay, good. I should sign books. So if anybody would like me to sign their book, I have a pen. Have several. All right, good. Well, thank you so much for coming.